Okay, so what if we tried to cover all of economics? I'm talking everything from your morning coffee to why your phone was made in another country in just the next 5 minutes. I know, it sounds completely nuts. But here's the thing. At its core, economics is just the story of human choice. Simple as that. So let's start the clock and see if we can do it.
It all boils down to something super simple, a universal truth, really. You're human, and because you're human, you want stuff. Like food, a place to live, and come on, let's be honest, maybe a TV that's just a little bit bigger than your cousin's. It's just hardwired into us.
But right away, that universal desire for more stuff, it smacks us right in the face with the one single question that basically gave birth to the entire field of economics. If we all want stuff, then why can't we just have everything?
And the answer? Well, it's one single incredibly powerful word: scarcity. It's the simple fact that there just aren't enough resources to satisfy everyone's wants. There's not enough land for all the houses we want, not enough food for every single person to have a feast every night, and definitely not enough of those slightly larger TVs. And this one problem, this is what forces us to make choices.
All right, and that is where economics really begins. So, Section 1, let's talk about the logic of choice, the basic rules that scarcity forces on every single one of us.
Every single choice you make, and I mean every choice, has a kind of hidden price tag. It's not about money, though. It's about the value of the next best thing you didn't do. That's called opportunity cost. So right now, by choosing to watch this, your opportunity cost might be scrolling through cat videos. And hey, I really hope we're winning that trade-off for you.
So, if we can't have everything, how do we get more of what we want? The answer is trade. And the engine that makes trade work so well is this brilliant idea called comparative advantage. Now, here's the part that's kind of counterintuitive. It's not about being the absolute best at doing something. It's about figuring out what you're relatively good at, or hey, even what you're just the least bad at, and focusing on that. Then you trade for everything else. When we do that, somehow we all end up with more stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so we're all out here making choices, weighing opportunity costs, and trading with each other. But how do all those little individual decisions add up to, the entire global economy? How does it all connect? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the magic of markets.
Look, any market, and I don't care if it's the stock market or the market for avocados at your local grocery store, it all runs on two giant opposing forces. You've got supply, which is just how much of a thing is available, and you've got demand, which is how much people want that thing. And the price, that's just the result of the constant tug of war between those two.
So what actually makes those forces of supply and demand shift around? Well, it's all about incentives. This is the real engine of the market. It's a super simple rule. People respond to rewards and punishments. I mean, if pizza suddenly costs $1, you can bet demand is going to shoot way up. But if it's $100 a slice, yeah, you're probably just going to make a sandwich at home. Incentives are what drive almost all of our economic behavior. Now, of course, just trading stuff for other stuff can get really messy, right? I mean, you can't exactly pay your Wi-Fi bill with a goat. And that's why we invented the ultimate economic tool, money. Think of it like this. Money is the lube that keeps the gears of the economy spinning without grinding to a halt. It's a way to trade, a way to measure value, and a way to save up that value for later.
Okay, so we've got this gigantic, swirling system of people making, buying, and selling stuff. It's huge. So how on earth do we even begin to measure all of it? Well, that brings us to Section 3, the economy's scoreboard.
The one big number you always hear about is GDP, which stands for Gross Domestic Product. All it is, really, is the total price tag of all the stuff and services a country produces in a year. Now, the formula might look a little scary, but it's actually pretty simple. It's just all the stuff you and I buy, plus all the things businesses invest in, plus all the money the government spends, plus our exports minus our imports. That's it. That's the whole economy in one number.
But, and this is a huge but, GDP is a really blunt tool. It's just as important to know what it doesn't measure. It completely misses things like unpaid work at home, any black market activity, the damage we do to the environment. And maybe most importantly, it has absolutely nothing to say about whether all this economic activity is actually making us happy. So yeah, it's a useful number, but it's also deeply flawed. One economist called it a microwave with no door. It does one thing, but it's not the whole story.
So if the economy is this massive, complicated machine, who's actually trying to steer it? Who's pulling the levers? That takes us to Section 4, where we meet the big players, governments and central banks.
And this leads us to a question that I guarantee you've wondered about at some point. If a country is short on cash, why can't the government just, print more money and make everybody rich?
Well, here's the simple but incredibly powerful reason why that's a terrible idea. If you suddenly dump a ton of new money into the system, but the amount of actual stuff to buy, the cars, the food, the houses, stays the same, all that happens is that prices go up to soak up the extra cash. You have more money chasing the exact same amount of goods, and that is inflation.
And when that process spirals totally out of control, you get something terrifying called hyperinflation. You want to see how bad it can get? Just look at this number. That was the annual inflation rate in Zimbabwe back in 2008. It got so bad they were literally printing $100 trillion bills that still weren't enough to buy a loaf of bread. Just think about that.
So the incredibly difficult job of keeping inflation in check usually falls to a country's central bank. In the US, that's the Federal Reserve. A good way to think of them is as the driver of the economy's car, and they basically have two pedals. They can control the money supply, and they can set interest rates, which is really just the cost of borrowing money. They use these to either hit the gas on the economy or slam on the brakes.
Of course, governments also play a massive role through taxes. They collect our tax money and then spend it on public goods, things like roads, national defense, and welfare programs. And, just like any of us, when the government spends more money than it brings in through taxes, it has to borrow. And all that borrowing adds up to become the national debt.
All right, for our final section, we need to talk about the biggest, most unpredictable wild card in this whole equation, which is, of course, us, people. So welcome to the messy, sometimes irrational, but always fascinating human element of economics.
So to try and organize all of us messy humans, societies have basically argued over two giant ideas for centuries. On one side, you have capitalism, which is all about private ownership and free markets. On the other, you have socialism, which focuses more on collective or state ownership. Now look, that's a massive oversimplification, but the most important thing to know is that in reality, pretty much every single country on the planet is a mixed economy, just a different blend of the two, with everyone constantly arguing about where exactly to draw the line. And that, right there, leads us to the ultimate billion-dollar question that fuels pretty much all of our political debates. So, what's the best system?
You want the simplest, most honest answer there is? No one has nailed it. Not perfectly. The reality is that every single system has incredible strengths and also some really dangerous, potentially fatal flaws. There's just no magic bullet.
And maybe that's the real secret to all of this. Economics isn't really a book of answers. It's more like a pair of glasses. It's a framework for understanding the questions themselves. It doesn't tell you what choice to make. It just shows you with brutal honesty the hidden cost, the trade-off that comes with every single choice. And once you learn to see those trade-offs everywhere, well, that's when you really start to see how the world works.